Afternoon, everyone. Some of the things I would like to talk to you about today, we'll be touching over some of the stuff that Richard has already wised you up to some degree. Mike's handled the disclaimer, we don't need to go through that. Some of the bigger themes, you'll see similar names on there that Richard's just been discussing. I do think the bottom one is perhaps the most relevant to the long term, because all of the new technologies that you're going to hear about today and over the next years will all be related in one simple way, and that is they're susceptible to be attacked by hackers and cyber criminals and so on. So I think that's a really strong point, and it creates a kind of a benchmark, a floor, if you like, across all of the technology space. So something always to bear in mind is where amid all of this digital data going everywhere around the world, who's going to protect it? Who's going to look after your investments, your personal data, that kind of thing? Some of the consumer themes, you see PCs drifting well down here, smartphones still a growth market, the Internet of Things that Richard touched on, wearables, you've probably heard this to death, and there's not that many strong market products at the moment for wearables. Some fitness stuff going on here. You may have heard Fitbug. It's a small company on AIM. It's had some success recently. Its shares done very, very well. But that is very much an emerging market, and we don't really know exactly how it's going to play out. I mean, the big story there has been Google Glass, and that's had varying levels of success, and it's being temporarily pulled for the time being. Tapping into what Richard again was also saying, innovation. And this is absolutely fundamental to how technology develops, how businesses can embrace new markets, and how they can make some money out of it. You fundamentally can have a great idea, but if you can't execute, you don't make any money. If you can execute a sensible plan, if you've got a way of doing existing business better, if you make things a bit faster, building better tools, better services, that's the way you disrupt existing markets with new technology, as well as creating new markets themselves. I'd like to point out this is notorious, however, for winners and losers. Many of us here will be familiar with these old formats here. They're both outdated now, but back in the 80s, the fight between Betamax and VHS was who's going to win, who's going to win. Eventually, we know VHS won. And just as VHS won and claimed a bit of a space, digital technology came in and kind of replaced it anyway. So there's always transformation in the market, and it's easy to get caught up in a single technology, a single company's product, and think this is going to be a winner. And you have to be aware that what comes around the corner tomorrow may completely blow the market apart. So it's always something to bear in mind. What's gone before, we can learn lessons from. This is another good example. We all had CDs, and many of us still got lots of CDs. But there was the micro CD, and this was going to be brilliant because it had so much more digital capacity on there, and it was tiny. And of course, they lasted about 5 minutes because MP3 technology came along and just meant you could just store your music on your computer. Far easier to use, save space, etc. So they were around for about 2 or 3 years, then gone. I'd like to point out about perceptions from investors. This is a share price. I won't mention who the company is. But you'll see at the end of the dot-com boom, the share price clearly had a massive sell-off, like everything did. The irony here is that this company was a loss maker, and it was just moving into its first earnings. So first profits, and yet that was nowhere near enough to stop that massive collapse. You know, the world was going to hell in the handcart at the time. Second example, a company that's been trading fairly stably, that's what the share price seems to be telling us, and suddenly you have this explosion of growth. I always wonder what happens here. Does it go down there, or does it go up there? That's one way to find out. Can anyone guess? Let's get a bit interactive here. Would you rather buy that share price, or would you rather buy that share price? Just in general terms. Let's have a show of hands. So chart 1. Who would buy that? And who would buy that? Well, probably slightly favouring the chart 1, but it's fairly even. Let's find out who it is. Those snapshots were taken from this area and this area. And as you can see, sometimes you can get absolutely lucky. I imagine Richard would love to have been way at the start of there, and wouldn't we all? Run some numbers. The IPO was in 1997. It was a loss-making company at the time. You may not be aware. $18 they floated at. If you'd invested $1,000 at the time, good luck to you. Today it'd be worth $246,000 by the time you adjust it for dividends and so on. That's based on a recent share price of $345. That's the kind of money that is available, but you have to be very, very lucky to get in there early. The key thing here with Amazon is it disrupted a market, an existing market. We all used to go to bookstores. Now they're kind of rarely spotted bookstores, aren't they? You can't really find them too many high streets here and there. Waterstones has gone kind of belly up, and HMV and the old Ottiker's business went that similar way. W.H. Smith struggling with their print publications. This has become a thing of the past, largely because Amazon had a great idea. Why would we want to go to a bookshop? When we know what we want to do, we can just press some buttons, put in a credit card, and get our stuff delivered. And I know from personal experience, it is an absolutely brilliantly seamless way of not only shopping, but also searching for new ideas. The way people who bought this book also bought these books. And that's the kind of data analysis that we're just starting to realise is rich. Lots of information to be had. But we get some trailblazers that don't necessarily work out. One of the problems we've had over the last 18 months or so is that we've had a wealth of IPOs coming in from the smaller end of the market, as Richard touched on. And some of them have really struggled to live up to their expectations. These three companies, you can't see, the third one is Fusion X. It's a Malaysian-based data analytics company. One Disco and Blur Group. I think Blur Group are presenting here today. But you'll see the share prices had this massive uptick where expectations were flying high. Everyone thought these are going to the moon. Of course, the reality check came. Contracts got a bit delayed. Everything got a bit shifted to the right. Expectations came crashing back down again. I imagine this is the kind of area that Richard was talking about he likes to buy. Don't know if he will be buying. Coupled with this, with disappointments from some of the AIM IPOs, has been a relative dearth at the top layer. These companies that were high quality, long-term profit growers, not just revenues, profits, giving you dividends as well. Companies like SDL, translation software. Companies like Aviva, they do computer-aided design software, largely for the infrastructure, oil, nuclear power, that kind of stuff. Many of these companies have faced really challenging times. Aviva, the oil price, SDL, internal execution issues. So there's been a lack of supply, if you like, of quality technology stories to meet the clear need from investors, which I believe is why so many people have gone into many of the AIM IPOs and maybe overcooked the prices. Maybe that's what's driven prices up, driven expectations sky high. A third thing to mention, companies also leaving the market. Over the last maybe 4 to 5 years, we've seen big infrastructure technology companies kiss goodbye to the market for one reason or another. Logica, gone. Misys went just this last year. CSR, super Bluetooth company, that's going. We've also had advanced computer software as well. A brilliant little business come healthcare company, profitable, organic growth plus acquisitive growth, had a fantastic track record on the market. Private equity decided they're going to take it over, and they did. Touching on some of these hotspots, payments. I doff my cap to Richard because he's obviously picked some pretty good ones, but there are plenty of ones who are still to prove that they can actually make a business out of this. We have Microsoft in payments, we have Google Wallets, we have Apple Pay. These are super massive technology companies with vast resources, and they don't really know how it's going to pan out. So for small companies to come to the market with some very good ideas, but can they execute those ideas? Can that become meaningful? And so far, I would say no. Monetize for a long time had a great relationship connecting the banking industry with the retail industry, with the telecom industry to connect the whole circle. But they've had some serious execution issues. Now it's effectively up for sale. Bango it's got some great one-click payment mobile application payments technology. But it's been around a while, 10 years, 6 different cash calls in 10 years. It still hasn't yet made a profit. MoPower, a very recent one, I think it was about December 2013 this floated on the market, had a very strong run initially and has been an absolute disaster ever since. Contracts have been delayed, pushed to the right, pushed to the right, pushed to the right, and it's really struggled. Had to raise cash a couple of times last year. And Proxima as well, they're near field communication in terms of their payments technology, effectively like similar to your Oyster card, touchscreen stuff. Again, it's had a really good initial run, and the share price has since halved since August 2013. So picking winners in the technology space is not easy to do, clearly. This, funnily enough, brings us round to some of the less fashionable ends of the market. The kind of utility tech, if you like. Sage has been selling its accountancy software and enterprise resource planning software to smaller companies for years and been doing a great job. But it's having to struggle with this idea of how it takes its core license revenue stream and turns it into a subscription revenue stream. And it doesn't yet have a solution. The interesting thing is Stephen Kelly, former government man and a well-respected technologist, has taken over there and is yet to come up with a business plan of how he's going to drive the company forward, how he's going to tackle these issues. And yet investors don't seem to care, because that was roughly when Stephen Kelly joined Sage, and that's what the share price has done since. Micro Focus, company that has generated cash in enormous quantities. It plays into the really core language skills of COBOL. COBOL is a computer coding language that runs many of the legacy systems around the globe. It's been involved in a very big merger, but I think it was about, I have to figure here, it was 450 million to my calculations of cash returned via ordinary and special dividends over the last three and a half years since Kevin Loosemore returned to that company. So there's been a clear drive to let's go back to quality, let's go back to reliability. It's all very well invested in stars of the future, but since it's so hard to get them right, sometimes it's better to stand back and say, let's go for stable, steady cash flow. Just to put into context, these are the two UK technology sector performance against the FTSE All-Share. There's the All-Share software sector and the hardware sector. The hardware sector basically is a euphemism for ARM Holdings now, because there's hardly anything else left in the tech hardware sector of any size anyway. It's worth probably about 97% of the sector. Now this has led all through, from about here, right through last year, talk about technology bubbles. There may have been bubbles in small spaces, but I never agreed that there was anything like a bubble of the dot-com era, which some people were suggesting, some of our more flamboyant red-top newspaper friends. And to put this into context, this is how the same two sectors have performed since the dot-com crash. So while on a short-term view, it may look like they've just run away into stupid valuations, but in real terms, they have really had a sudden jolt, and then they've just had a snail's pace get back to stability. The key thing for me is always cash is king. It's very easy, I think, for investors to be swerved by the latest gadget, encouraged to believe that it's different this time. But to me, technology is the same as any other stock market sector. Cash will always out. If you've got no cash today, it's about, but when are you going to give me the cash? That's why we develop a business. You build profits, you build revenues that generate cash. That cash in turn hopefully finds its way into dividends that go into your pocket as investors. Never forget, cash will never go out of fashion. That's my time up. I hope you found it useful. Thank you.